Thank you for listening to Dharma Talk from One Mind Dharma. To find out more about us, you can visit www.oneminddharma.com or just oneminddharma.com since you haven't had to type in www. In like 15 years now. But either way, both go to our website. You can download our app at oneminddharma.com/app. Learn about supporting us, as we super would love your support, or to sponsor a podcast or anything like that at oneminddharma.com/support. And this week's episode is brought to you by Metaph, which we've both used the app. Actually, I think you used it first.
Yeah, it's really cool. You can check in with your emotions, and great way to log and track how you're feeling.
Yeah, I was a little skeptical of it just because I'm skeptical of more self-help apps on my phone that I don't use. But it's really cool and unique. You log an emotion and where you're experiencing and what it is. And as you do it more and more, you can begin to kind of gain some awareness about, oh, look, like when I'm feeling joy, I often report feeling it in my chest. And it can be really helpful to really see, where we're feeling something when we're experiencing an emotion and exactly what it's like. It can help us tune into it more, which is actually going to relate to today's episode. But anyways, check them out. It's called Metaph, Metaph. It's on, I don't know if it's on Google Play. It's definitely on the Apple App Store. And they have a website at metaph.me. And again, that's metaphi.me. M-E. Check them out. They're good people that run it. We've spoken to them a few times, email and social media and on the phone. And really love the people that run it, which is always great to support and work with people and download apps that we know there's good people running it. So with that, we thought we'd talk about joy today and kind of how we experience that.
Yeah, so I've been thinking a lot about joy recently, in lieu of a couple things that you told me. Actually, I think I'm going to let you start off with a couple things that you told me recently that got me started thinking about joy.
But I just pawned it off onto you.
Well, now I'm giving it back to you.
Was it the talk I gave the other night?
It was when you went to the conference and the findings that were presented.
Oh, what's his name? Mario Martinez. I think Dr. Mario Martinez. And this, I went to it's called Innovations in Recovery, and it's a pretty large addiction treatment conference in San Diego every year, put on by foundations. And they do another one, I think, in Palm Beach or something. But anyways, I was listening to Dave Smith talk, who is, I'm not sure what his position is. He's a meditation teacher, an author. He wrote a book called Ethical Mindfulness. He teaches with Against the Stream. And I don't know if he's the director or something of Refuge Recovery Centers. Anyways, I was listening to Dave talk, and he was talking about research done by this man, I believe his name was Dr. Mario Martinez, on joy, and how joy is actually one of the things we struggle with experiencing the most. And he kind of just like talked about it for a moment and encouraged us to investigate it or look him up, which I did. I looked up some research he did and some interviews this guy did. And he was talking about how essentially when the brain experiences joy, we find it incredibly discomforting or uneasy. And the brain actually responds with, something with cortisol.
Yeah, increased cortisol, which is usually how we measure stress levels. It's considered the stress hormone. So people who have increased levels of cortisol are considered more stressed, and you can measure it. You can take like a sample and see people's cortisol levels rise after experiencing joy. It is stressful to be joyful.
Which is not to say that you should be miserable, and not what we're going to say here at all. But, and I don't, I'm not sure exactly why the reason is. I can reiterate something that Dr. Martinez says, which is that there's more cortisol released, the less worthy we feel of the joy, was his finding and his experience. And I would agree with that I don't know if it's American culture that I know as I grew up in it, or as the culture of my family or whatever it was. But I do know that kind of how I grew up is we're not taught exactly how to experience joy or how to deal with it or how to be present with it. And I think it even is true for, being in recovery and all the therapy and treatment centers and everything. Also in meditation practice, we focus so much on coping with life's difficulties and what's wrong with us. Or I shouldn't put it like that because I don't mean that, but these difficulties or what's wrong, what we find wrong with us, and dealing with the shame or the guilt or the poor behavior, dealing with the behavior of others, the painful things that we need to also focus on how to deal with joy. And there's many factors there of, can we tune in with gratitude? I know being in the 12-step community, there was a ton of talk of gratitude and its importance. But really, we're missing this whole piece of experience when we're not really working with joy. I also just really think that the suffering around experiencing joy is more subtle often than the suffering around unpleasantness. Like if you get fired from your job, a job you really loved, that suffering is really going to be kind of obvious in a sense. Like you're really going to feel uneasy. Whereas when you're clinging to some joy, or you're experiencing joy and not really sure how to interact with it, that suffering is a little more subtle. It's not as obvious. So I think it's something important to look at.
Yeah, I think it got me thinking about what's often called the negativity bias, which is our mind's bias towards remembering and giving more weight and salience to things that are negative. And I think that this reaction to joy speaks to the negativity bias, that it's a really unusual feeling for us, or strange feeling for us, to be with the joy that we're experiencing. And so it's sort of stressful because we don't know what to do with it. We don't know how to hold it. And I think one of the greatest parts of meditation and something like a joy practice, whether it's like a gratitude practice, I think there's even parts of metta that are like this, and certainly appreciative joy. It teaches us how to hold that. And I have a professor, maybe I've said this on here before, but he says how to hold it with an open hand. So not like squeezing it so tightly and not kind of dropping it on the floor, but really gently holding the joy with an open palm. And I think I imagine, because meditation has been shown to have other neurological benefits, and and it's been shown to really help us balance out that negativity bias, that this is one place that we could work on, that we have the ability and the plasticity to really work on this. The more we practice feeling the joy, just noticing when it's present. I think one of the best ways to do that is to notice where and how it feels, where you feel it, how you feel it. So, okay, I'm feeling joyful right now. Let me take a moment, let me pause, and let me really feel this. Where is it in my body? Is it sort of all over? Is it a buzziness? Does it feel like a lightness in my chest? And really becoming more familiar, stopping and starting to get to know that joy. We can retrain our brains not to be so aversive to it, but to really hold it, to not tend toward the negative, to not just explore the negative emotions and hold on to those, but to also really be able to feel and hold and be present with the joy.
Yeah, and a couple things there. One is, and we talked about this recently at our Sonoma Insight groups, that Rick Hansen talks about this in The Buddha's Brain, who is a neuropsychologist and author, has written a couple books. And in The Buddha's Brain, he speaks about that 5-to-1 or 7-to-1 ratio, where we give more weight to, the difficult experiences or unpleasant experiences, I guess. And how you actually, by sitting and being with something that brings you joy, he says for 20 seconds can dramatically change the way our brain interacts with it. And I think the claim in the book, and I could be wrong, so read the book, or if you've read it, correct me. I think he says in 3 weeks only, that can actually change the way you interact with joyful experiences. That being said, 20 seconds is a long time relative to what we often do, but it's so simple. Just to, I always use the example of just nature. Oh, I'm sorry, I just hit you.
Okay.
As in nature, like sometimes I'll notice, the sun going down and there's like a beautiful sunset, or a flower or a hummingbird outside my window, and I have the tendency to be like, oh, that's cool, and then go back to work. and not to procrastinate all day, but it's good. It's okay to sit there and enjoy it for a moment and feel how it feels to watch that. Also, just to pause and mention again, the Metaph app is a great way to do that. That's why I said it relates to our topic today, is to really pause and identify where we're and how we're experiencing something can, as you said, familiarize ourselves with it, and we begin to recognize it more clearly when it arises.
Yeah, absolutely. And just to go back to that ratio you were just talking about, the ratio that it's thought to be is it takes about 5 or 7 positive experiences.
Not 6.
5 to 7. Yeah, I said or. 5 to 7 positive experiences to outweigh 1 negative one. So the way I always think about it is like the checkout clerk at the grocery store is mean to you, and then you spend the rest of the day thinking about it, sort of ignoring all of the rest of the positive things that have been happening for your day, throughout your day, all these little moments of joy that we just gloss over. Sometimes in recovery, it's called like collecting the ones. There could be, 100 people in the room who like you, or 99 people in the room who like you, and 1 who doesn't, and that's what you hold on to. And just like you said, the beautiful part is that we have this ability through mindfulness and meditation to really change that. That it's not just, we have this negativity bias, and we're just always going to be prone to negative, and we're just screwed. That's totally not what this is about. That it's very hopeful, actually, I think. And the more that we're aware of our negativity bias, the more we can embrace the joy and start to change that.
Yeah, and there's that hope there, and I've seen it in my own life, just with those things I mentioned, that I didn't used to pause and like really enjoy the moments, those little things. And I use little things like in quotes because they're not little. They add up and they're important. But I wouldn't even notice sometimes that something was bringing me joy. I would be like, oh, that's interesting. Like the hummingbird flying by is interesting. But when I tune into it, it's bringing me some sense of joy. And I wouldn't have even noticed that. So I've seen it in my own life where I begin to notice these little joyful things more and more. I also think there's a piece there, and you mentioned, of holding it with an open hand, of also not grasping or clinging to the joyful experiences. And we, again, talked about this at a group recently, that, when we allow ourselves to experience something with that open hand, we're able to be fulfilled by it, I like to think. One of the ways I often relate it to experience is by eating. That, when you have whatever it is that you like, a cookie or ice cream or whatever it is, and you enjoy it so much that you're not even really tasting it or being present for how much you're enjoying it. You just kind of, not you, just me. Like, I just shovel it in my mouth.
That's what I do too.
And it's the same way with all experiences. Are we really being present for it and getting kind of satiated with it? That what happens is when we're present with something and we really kind of take the time to appreciate it and be with it, we are able to let it go a little more easily. Whereas when we aren't, we just cling to it. We grasp, we hold on. We don't notice that it's impermanent. I often tell the story, the Thich Nhat Hanh story of he was watching I think it's a poem about the dewdrops on the morning blades of the grass. Wow, I'm butchering this. Thich Nhat Hanh is such a beautiful way of speaking. It's like insulting to try to replicate it without reading it. Anyways, a story about the blades of grass and the dewdrops on them in the morning, and sitting there and appreciating how beautiful they are, while also recognizing that they're impermanent. As the sun comes out and the grass heats up and the air heats up, the dewdrops evaporate. And that's not a bad thing. It's not inherently a sad thing. It's part of experience. If we can enjoy the dewdrops, knowing that they're impermanent, we can let them go instead of being sad that they're gone.
Yeah. We don't have to have this that tight holding that I can't let go of this. Can I give a brief story or case study? It's not a personal story. So there's this
is it nonfiction or fiction?
It's nonfiction. Okay. I love psychology, so I often share psychology things. And there's this thing called superior autobiographical memory. And essentially what it is people who have it, it's very rare, remember everything that's happened in their life with incredible detail, like about themselves. So, I mean, it's really pretty unbelievable. There's videos about it online. I think 60 Minutes did a whole thing on it a few years ago. So, like, if you ask someone with superior autobiographical memory, you know, what was the weather like on May 6th, 2011? They can tell you.
50% chance of rain.
They can tell you exactly what it was like. And so often, when asked, one of the first questions that they get is, that must be horrible. That must be so terrible to never be able to forget anything that's happened to you, like just all those bad things you can never forget about. And overwhelmingly, at least all the interviews that I have seen, when people with this are asked this question, they say, no, not at all. I don't find that that's the case at all. And I have a theory about this. And my theory is that if you really pay attention, the majority of the things that happen in your life are not negative. The majority of the things that are happening in your life are either neutral, there's not really a lot going on in them.
Definitely most neutral.
Or they're pretty good. But because we have this negativity bias, we tend to remember those things. So we're projecting that onto them, whereas they're really holding everything with a very open palm. They're really saying, no, I don't really grasp at the joy. I don't really cling to the negative things. It's sort of giving equal weight to everything in your life. So the experience is not a negative one. It's just sort of, oh no, it's very neutral.
It's really interesting. And I think it's true. Like, when you look back on like memories, you can remember these like bad things or difficult experiences so well often. Of course, I can remember really joyful ones like getting married.
Yeah, and you might cling to that.
And you cling to it, or I cling to it. But yeah, it's true. And I also, I really do think that there's a reason for that. It's, biological, and evolution has made us that way to kind of protect us. But it does, like you said, it's not, this isn't like an episode of hopelessness and you're destined to be sad, but to learn to be with the joy so we can, not just so we can make memories or anything, but so we can really begin to see clearly. Because I think that's what it is. It's not necessarily about experiencing joy better. It's about, or experiencing joy more. It's about seeing a little more clearly. Because even when we do have joy, studies are starting to show that it's difficult for us to feel joy.
Yeah.
So to really change that through appreciative joy practice and mindfulness, really, of body, of mind, of the proverbial heart, or heart space, and to really train ourselves to be familiar with joy and accept it and tune into it with appreciative non-clinging.
Yeah.
Appreciative non-clinging.
Really?
That sounds like
I
the
like
subtitle
that.
to a book. Joy, appreciative non-clinging.
I think that's all I have for today.
Do you have any, just to wrap up, any suggestion on something someone can do in their daily life to appreciate joy? Something you do, maybe, that's beneficial.
I copied from Rick Hansen, but to just pause when there is a moment of joy. I like to close my eyes if that's possible, and feel the smile on my face. Smiling will make you feel happier too. So to really take a few seconds to close my eyes and feel the smile, and to have that moment of experiencing joy.
So for me, it's just similar, as I really try to notice that lightness in the breath. That, if you sit here right now and you think of a very joyful time in your life, you can feel a change in the body breathing, and in the chest, maybe an openness or a warmth or a softness or whatever it is for you. That like kind of top of the chest almost feeling is when I feel that present, it kind of triggers me now to stop and appreciate it. So give it a shot and try some appreciative joy practice, and with yourself as well, not just with others. I think we have some on YouTube and in our app and podcast, Mudita, or Appreciative Joy. So thank you for listening. I'm looking at you like you were listening. Thank you for
You're
talking
welcome.
as well. Thank you all for listening. If you want to learn more about us, visit oneminddharma.com or www.oneminddharma.com. You can download our app at oneminddharma.com/app. We know it's been a little janky. I think that's the technical term, right? So we're working on it a little bit. You can support us at oneminddharma.com/support. We appreciate any support. And oh yeah, and don't forget to check out Metaph. Follow them on Instagram. I think it's at Metaph app. Go to their website, metaph.me, and download the app and shoot us an email, info@oneminddharma, with any questions. If you want us to talk about something, if you want some meditations on joy, if you want to sponsor an episode, if you want to share your joy with us, whatever.
Absolutely.
Thank you.